now it's recording. Okay, so I'll introduce you to the folks that we have on our panel for today. And the fun thing about Zoom is they can't see what order they appear on my screen, so it'll be a bit of a mystery for when they're going to pop up. So the first person I'll tell you about is Nikki, whose last name I wish I had written down. I think Nikki Hetherington Biddiscombe.
No, it's just Hetherington.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's
Nikki.
too long the other way. Biddiscombe Hetherington is just too much of a mouthful.
And it has a good flow.
Oh, yeah.
Nikki is a parishioner at the Church of St. Andrew in Cole Harbour, and she was part of the first round of the Connectors Missional Leadership Cohort of our diocese, and she's been involved in lots of cool family and youth children's ministry kind of stuff in her parish. We also have Will Ferry, who is the rector of the parish of Christ Church in Amherst, who, like lots of clergy in the diocese, has been busy figuring out how to do church and ministry online in new ways. And Sheila McGlynn, who is the youth animator for the Anglican Church of Canada. And Sheila's been kind of facilitating the connection between lots of dioceses and the primate as kind of a way of engaging youth online, and has done lots of kind of Zoom meetings with youth leaders from across the country. So Sheila's got some insights from a bunch of different contexts to hopefully share with us. So I thought we would start with, I have a list of the things that we're going to do, and I just lost it, so I'm just going to pull it up. Each of our panelists just telling us a little bit about the things that they have been up to. So I'll pick the first person, and then the first person can pick who the second person is, and the second person can pick the third person. I should say, just for the attendees, the panelists know this, you'll see that Kristen is also listed as a panelist. That's Kristen McKenzie. She is my backup facilitator in case I need to go tend to my child. So her name is probably on your screen, but she's not going to talk unless things go sideways. Okay, so Sheila, can you tell us about your online things?
For sure. Thank you all for having me. I think it's important to say that Allie asked for the primate, and I am not the primate. So the primate is offering to do a lot of connecting with young people these days, and she would have loved to be on this call. Unfortunately, this timing just didn't work for her schedule, and it's been the first she's had to say no to. So I hope that something can happen in the next little while that you can have the primate on. So because I'm not the primate. Anyhow, I have been, I watched the movie Julie and Julia the other day about Julia Child, and her whole thing is don't apologize. So I'm not going to apologize for not being the primate. I am Sheila. I did not wear purple today, which is something that people who know me know that I love purple, but I always get jokes about wanting to be a primate when I'm wearing purple. So I'm not wearing purple, I'm wearing burgundy. It's different. As Allie said, I'm the animator for youth ministries for the General Synod offices in Toronto. I'm currently actually in the Diocese of Algoma, just about 2.5 hours north of Toronto. I live and work in Toronto, but since COVID, I'm up here with my mother, trying to keep her safe. So technically, I'm on a different Indigenous land than I normally am. I'm just north of the Wata Mohawk territory. So I just wanted to name that. And I realized that I haven't done any research on that. So that's probably another thing I should do while I'm here, is to just research that, the territory, history there, and the treaty and all those sorts of things. So I don't have much to say about that. As far as connecting with young people online, I don't do traditional youth ministry in the sense of I have a youth group that I connect with regularly. Because I'm in the General Synod offices, mostly my job is to connect with youth leaders and support them in the work that they do. So I have been doing some of that since everything shifted to online. At the beginning of it all, I said, youth leaders know how to do this online thing because I connect with them regularly through Zoom. So that transition wasn't difficult for me. Because I was dealing with people who already kind of knew the technology, which is kind of handy. And I don't think youth leaders had a huge difficulty starting to connect to youth online because youth are so techy to start with. What I'm hearing is from other youth leaders is how it's not the same, right? And it's the same, like everybody in church is saying, church online is not the same. And so there are limitations to online connections. But I think that what I'm also hearing is from young people. So I was part of a bit of a roundtable with the primate, with some young people from the Diocese of Ottawa. And the primate, so part of the piece was they were asking questions. So they asked questions of the primate got those questions in advance and answered all the questions. And then I think to everybody's surprise, the primate said, I want to know what you want to tell me about what I need to be listening to about what's happening with you these days. And everybody was kind of like you could kind of tell, like, I don't know what to say to that, right? But it was a really interesting conversation that ended up unfolding. And even the leader of that group was taken by surprise. She was like, oh, I didn't expect that the primate wanted to hear from young people. And I want to offer that as a piece that I think is really important, is that even though we're not meeting with young people regularly, we're not in the same room with them, their voices still matter, and we need to keep listening to them. We need to keep asking the questions, even if the questions don't get results right away, right? There was an awkwardness in that conversation because everyone was like, I don't know what to say. And often, like, I deal with adults in my other world of work, where when I say, what do you need right now? They can't answer the question, right? It doesn't mean that it isn't a valid question. So I would suggest keep connecting with young people, even if it's not getting the response you're looking for. It's not really that untypical of regular youth group, because sometimes we need to keep engaging if we're not getting the response we're looking for anyway. So I wanted to say that is one thing that I think would be really important, is to keep the connections open, even if it's sending a text and you're not getting a response. Know that the connections are there. Another example is that I have, I sit on the committee that my work sits under is called Faith, Worship, and Ministry. And we have a committee of folks that volunteer for the General Synod. And on that committee is a youth member. They're actually a member of COGS. So they're the COGS rep on the Faith, Worship, and Ministry committee. And they're 21 years old. And I know that they're really struggling with COVID right now. And every time we meet, and we meet monthly, whenever we're on a Zoom call, I always message them privately. I always say, hey, how's it going? It's so good to see you. Sometimes I get a response and sometimes I don't. We had a meeting there on Tuesday and they didn't respond to my private message on Zoom, but they responded to me on Facebook afterwards. So like, just to keep those connections going, even if they're not getting the responses, that's something that I think is really important right now. Other youth leaders have said to me in a Zoom call that I've had two since all of this happened, where we just talk about like what's going well, what's the struggle. We just kind of, it depends on who's on the call and how much we get to share. But the last one we had, a youth leader said, we can't expect big faith talks through online stuff right now, right? The youth groups gather, they like to do the fun stuff, maybe play a game of Pictionary on Zoom, maybe do, like they're planning, this one particular leader is planning a graduation party on Zoom. So they're gonna all dress up in their graduation outfits. Like they can do fun things, but the deep faith stuff that happens more so in person is really hard for a lot of young people to do online. So don't necessarily expect those big things right now. I think that keeping the lines of communication open is the most important thing right now. So you might not get the big faith formation talks or or enlightenments or things like that, and that's okay right now. Another piece that I would just wanted to share is that a young person from that talk in Ottawa sent an email afterwards. So you know that it's significant if a young person actually sits down at their computer and writes an email to say that they were so touched that the church cares that much about them, that myself and the primate were part of that Zoom call for them. So I think that those little nuggets come in strange ways at this time. They're not going to come all the time. The feedback isn't always going to be there, but I think that it's important to know that it affects young people. And so often I say that my ministry is often about sowing seeds, and you never know what's going to get planted. We are in a big time of sowing seeds and not knowing if they're taking root, but just trust that that's what's happening right now, and they're rooting in different ways for different young people. Sorry, that's probably longer than you wanted, but that's what happens with me when I talk. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Sheila. That was really great. So you can invite Will or Nikki to share, and just remember that Sheila's speaking from like a very different context. So your answer doesn't need to be as broad, but just what have you been up to? So Sheila, you can go ahead and pick.
Right, I forgot that was my next task. I will invite Will to share.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Sheila. I'm really glad to be part of this. I don't exactly feel like a fraud, but I feel like we're doing very little at Christchurch. So I'm glad to be able to share what we're doing. And, but just to say that everything we're doing, I think, can be expanded on. It's not exactly the minimum, but we're also a long way from the maximum. So at Christchurch here in Amherst, we had a pretty vibrant Sunday school of about 10 or 15 kids who would come regularly, and including a small group of teenagers and practically teenagers. And we sometimes would meet as a youth group, but not very often. So when this started, we really weren't sure what the best way was to start, because of course we didn't know how long it was going to last. So we started out with a lot of the stuff that we were doing was initiated by me, and it was me doing it. And that was partly because it just seemed easier for me to do it than try and help the other Sunday school teachers learn the technology and get dialed in and all that kind of stuff. But as it's been clear, the pandemic has gone on and on and on, we've been working to get things a little more broad, that share the leadership a little more broadly, which is really great because there's lots of really skilled people in the church, and it's also maybe not the best thing if the priest is just the one doing everything all the time, for a lot of reasons. So some of the things that we've been doing, we've had a few sessions of Zoom Sunday school with the young people who are interested. So I'll send an email around to parents and invite, and with an invitation and the link, and whoever comes, and we sort of make it work. I tried that a few times with the teen class. Actually, kind of what Sheila said, it's hard to get the big faith pieces in there, but it sure is nice to touch base with these folks and to see how they're doing. We did several weeks of Facebook Live Sunday school at our usual Sunday school time. So at Christchurch, we have an 8:30 service, Sunday school at 10, which is normally in the style of Godly Play when we're at church, and then an 11 o'clock service. So we tried to keep that pattern for a long time. Actually, I think we're still doing it through the pandemic. And the Sunday school piece was a Facebook Live piece that often I would do. And the interesting thing about that was that it was never quite clear to me how many young people were actually engaging with that. Adults really liked it. The lots of comments and feedback from adults who really enjoyed it. It made me feel like often when I've done children's talks in church, the kids, I don't know, maybe they like it, maybe it affects them. They don't really let me know one way or another. The adults are often very into it. And often for adults, like a children's talk would end up being a sort of shorter and more graspable sermon where they wouldn't necessarily pay attention or for the whole of the big sermon, 2 minutes of who is my neighbor is just right sometimes, just what you're looking for on a Sunday morning. So it felt like the Sunday school, the Facebook Live Sunday school was a little bit like that, which isn't a bad thing at all, just sort of a reflection there. I did a special Sunday school for just the week after the shooting rampage here in Nova Scotia. It was obviously and still is a very sensitive issue and was very much on everybody's minds. And I have a few really great kids books about death. And they're ones that I tend to use at funerals and things. I'll often put them in the family room. I often come in and sometimes it's the kids looking at them. Sometimes it's the rest of the family looking at them, but that's why they're there. And so I just used one of those books and I read the book and talked a little bit about death and what had happened, and we had some prayers. And again, like, it was very simple and I have no idea how many actual young people engaged with that, but I think for the ones who did and for the adults, it was helpful. I can't read my own notes here. Allie, you're gonna have to chime in and let me know if I forgot anything. Oh yeah, the other thing I've been trying to do is to connect with the parents of young people, both as part of like my normal practice through this pandemic of being in touch with people in the congregation when I can't see them on Sundays, but also like to deliberately ask about how the kids are doing in the midst of it. Like, this is a big thing. It's stressful for all of us, and it's not less stressful for kids. School is suddenly half online, half taught by their parents who may or may not be excited about it. They're home all the time. They can't see their friends. They can't go to soccer and gymnastics and dance and all the rest of it. And I think, like, as the parish priest, it is expected that I would check in on my parishioners. It's easy to forget the younger parishioners in that, but I think it's just as important. So I've been trying to do that, even if I don't talk to the young people directly, to talk to their families about how they're doing. Sheila, when you said this is a little bit like sowing seeds, I feel like I'm sowing seed in like that old-fashioned way of really widely scattering it. And it's really hard to know what's going to happen. Allie, can I talk about one thing we're doing with young people that's not really online?
Sure.
Okay, you're surrounded by it.
Oh, okay.
So the one thing we're trying to do is we've put together kits for young people, both in the church and in the community. They're outdoor exploring kits. So there's all sorts of things. So we put a dice in there, and along with the dice, there's a piece of paper. Like, if you roll a 1, you have to walk in this way, like different kind of fun walks. There's a magnifying glass to help you get a closer look. There's scavenger hunt lists and more. Allie did a lot of the finding the things to put in the bag. So we are going to drop those off or mail them to the young people of the parish. And then we did up an extra several dozen kits that we're going to take down to the Family Resource Center for kids in the community. And it's just that same piece of trying to stay in touch. I wrote a nice little letter to go along with them, just to say, like, we love you and we miss you, and this pandemic's hard, but we are thinking about you, and here's something to, go have some fun with. And hopefully they will. Okay, so I think that's it for me. Nikki, I guess you get to go next.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nikki from the Church of St. Andrew in Cole Harbour. My role is a little bit different than Sheila's and Will's. I'm a lay person. So yeah, that's a little bit different right there. So what we've been doing is we have started doing a family drop-in night. Probably 2 years ago, we started it. And we wanted families to come and be able to relax and enjoy their time together as a family. So we started serving a meal, and then we have a time where we spend like in worship, and then we have games. It's similar to a messy church idea, and we just get together, have a lot of fun. So because we've had that groundwork already done, it was really easy for us to just kind of like continue, pick up the pieces, and go with Zoom calls and stuff like that. We didn't get it started right away. I had a lot on the go by the time the closures kind of started, and but it's been great. We've been doing Zoom calls once a week, Sunday evenings at 6:30. We generally have 5 to 6 families who will join us on a Zoom call. We do a check-in with each other, so make sure everybody's doing okay, and you know how the kids are doing, and what games that they've played, and what TV shows they've watched, and that kind of stuff. So it's been really good to check in. Like Sheila, you had said about the sowing the seeds, like there has been moments where, you know, we've done some spiritual groundwork, but really it's just the kids are so excited to see their friends and their family from church that they're just wound. And so having any sort of like structure is really difficult. They're all trying to talk over each other, and it's chaos really, but the connection is definitely there within the families. And that is such a great part about all of this, is that even though we're all still individuals in our own homes, in our own little bubbles, we still know and we can still see our friends from church. And that connection is still just as strong now as it was when we were meeting like once a month. I've also been sending out different kind of handouts and stuff like that. We've done, like for Pentecost, we did a coloring page that everybody needs to videotape themselves holding up their Pentecost coloring page. Different links I've sent to the kids, like to the families, like Veggie Tales, you know, where I'm not sure of all the different families and how everything works, but sometimes there's two parents that are working from home and trying to get schoolwork done with the kids and trying to do their own work. And it's just, sometimes they just need a place to like, okay, put the kids, know that they're safe. Yes, maybe watch a little bit more TV, but it needs to be done in order to get the work done. So things to kind of occupy the kids, coloring pages, different things like that. And Monday, I sent out a movie link to Heaven is for Real. And so they got to, like on their own time, watch the movie, and then we're going to discuss it on Sunday night. So that should be interesting. And I spoke to in the email, I said to the parents that, you know, it may not be suitable for young children because it talks about heaven and death. And, you know, some of the kids are not quite ready for that because we have a wide range. And so parents could use their own discretion. Yeah, but that's kind of basically what we've been doing, and just connecting and keeping in touch, which has been really great. So, yay.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nikki, and all three of you for all of the things that you're doing and for telling us about them. So if you're watching and you have some questions, you could send those in either as Q&A or in the chat, and we can ask them to these folks. Just while people think about what those might be and type them down and send them in, I wonder what the biggest learning has been for you so far in doing ministry online. For any of the three of you, so you can think about it and just go when you're ready.
I'm happy to start. I feel like I started off by saying, oh yeah, I've been using Zoom forever. There's still things about it that I don't understand. Like the other day when my internet connection was bad, and I was telling, I think, folks before we started, I had a bad internet connection and I was connecting with youth leaders online and I was garbly, they were freezing, and I very quickly had to learn how to make somebody else the host of the meeting before I got kicked off, which I did. Thank God I was able to make somebody else the host. But then I was like not the host anymore. Anyway, so Zoom is still a little bit of a mystery to me. And I know that there's a lot that we can do in it. And I feel like I'm just sort of learning as I go. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Yeah, that's one of the big first learnings for me, I think.
I think I've learned about the importance of connection and back and forth in this. Just when Nikki was talking, I was thinking about our Facebook Live ones that we've done. And it's really hard to sit and talk to a screen and hope that somebody's paying attention. Like Zoom isn't the be all and end all like being in person is, but at least I can see like Sheila looking nicely at me and, you know, Nikki smiling and like, that's better than I hope. I don't even know if this is actually going out on Facebook Live. It just says it is, and who knows? So just a reminder for me, I guess, of the importance of the back and forth and the connection, and especially, you know, when you're doing Sunday school or ministry with little kids, like that they pop up with unexpected questions all the time. That's really lovely and a delight, and you don't get that on Facebook.
I think Zoom has definitely kind of been not a struggle, but it's been a learning curve. And I've disappeared from screens before, as you guys know, I did that earlier. So still working out the technology part, but I have a 15-year-old at home, and he's pretty technically savvy. So, you know, he's kind of like, Mom, that's old school. Like, why are you using that? Or, you know, like, get on House Party and play some games. And I'm like, what's House Party? So he's kind of introducing some of the technology to me as it goes. And so it's definitely a learning curve. But I think communication is probably the most important part of it. And just knowing that there's somebody else out there that's outside of your own comfort zone, that's outside of your bubble, that's thinking of you and that wants to know, like, genuinely how you're doing. That's probably the most important thing for me. So yeah, and as long as that's being done, then that's great.
Thanks for those answers. I'm in this Facebook group of people who do faith formation work with people of various ages, and someone yesterday posted something about their ongoing summer ministries, and they had on the website their guiding principles, which is really helpful. So I'll send those around to people so that you can just lift whatever you'd like from there. But one of the things that it said, I think it was actually the first one of their principles, was to use virtual spaces to gather where the gathering is the point, not the virtual space. So I think that's such an important thing, like that connection is the thing that really matters. Like, of course, using a tool that people know how to use is really important, but the neat features of Zoom aren't the reason that you use Zoom. It's whatever is going to facilitate being able to connect. So it was cool to hear some of you say that. Okay, so I got a message from Rena that it's been encouraging to hear that it's more about connecting with the families than the educational contact. I think that that absolutely is really true and really important. I can't remember what book I read this in, but in some youth ministry book once I read that if children, if young people walk away from Sunday school or youth group, and all that they take away is that someone cares about them, then you've done a good job. Like that's the work that's before us right now, I think. Okay, a question. What would be your next dream or goal to continue the great work you're already doing to connect with children and youth online? Even if it's just a dream that you're dreaming, even if there's no wheels under it yet, what would be the next dream or goal?
I think that for me, the goal would be really to continue to have some kind of online presence for ministry for children and young people, just to have that at all. Like we went from 0 to, I mean, not all the way to 60, I guess, 0 to 30 anyway, pretty quickly. And I think it'd be a big shame if we, the pandemic ends, we're allowed to go back to church, and we said, great, don't have to do that nonsense anymore. Like we're a pretty widely dispersed parish, and we incorporate a fair amount of countryside, and there are some people who just can't get to church every week, not to mention storm days and things like that. So to have some kind of regular online thing that people can engage in, young people can engage in, I don't know, this is the point where it becomes just a dream, because I don't know exactly what form that takes or what it looks like or anything, but I think that would be part of it for me.
I'll go next if you don't mind, Sheila. I would probably say my dream would be I would love to actually have like a youth group, where younger people, like teenagers, even up to like, early 20s could get together and just enjoy each other's company. I find, like the teenage years are so hard for some kids, and to have almost like an older mentor type of like an older brother or sister would be very helpful for today's youth. They seem to like struggle with so much personally that just to create some kind of I don't know, environment where they can connect and they can interact with somebody who's walked in their shoes, whether that be virtually or like actual in person, to create some good, strong relationships. Also I've been thinking about this since we've started with the whole online thing, is with our family drop-in night, we do the second Friday of every month. And what I would be interested in doing is to have almost like a video camera set up and enjoy the night with us for those people who can't make it. So they can see what we're having for supper, and they can see like the spiritual component to what we're doing, and they wouldn't be able to join us in the games or the crafts that we do, obviously, but they could always do their own. And just to have that time of fellowship with other Christian people would be really helpful in helping just people feel connected to a group. Yeah. So that would be my kind of dream.
I guess my dream is very practical in the sense that the plans are already in gear. So one of the big pieces of work that I work on is planning CLAY, which is the Canadian Lutheran Anglican Youth Event that I work with Ali on. And we've had to postpone for this summer, which is totally the right decision and the thing we had to do. But we're hoping to do some sort of mini version of Clay online. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what is going to be part of that. So it is still a bit of a dream. But I really would hope that out of that will come more people that were planning on attending Clay to sort of tap in and see what that's about. So maybe people who hadn't thought about going this summer might actually stream some of that and take in some of the talks or whatever we end up doing. So that's a bit of a dream, and hopefully will become a reality. And I hope that that will be a far-reaching kind of thing, and maybe people from that might decide to come next summer, which would be like ideal. That's my big dream around that. Another piece of work that I do is gathering youth leaders once a year. That was set to happen in the fall, and because of budgetary restrictions at the General Synod's offices right now, we've been asked to do no travel until the end of the year. So to save money on that big cost, and that's a big piece of the cost of gathering youth leaders is travel. So respecting that, I'm trying to figure out how do we do something online that will gather youth leaders. And again, I'm hopeful. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I'm hopeful that that could reach youth leaders that don't normally come to that gathering. Usually it's one person per diocese that comes. I'm kind of dreaming that that could be open to any youth leader in the country, and whatever we have as a plan of like speakers and things, that more people can access that. And so that's a dream that I have. So that's not engaging youth per se, but that's sort of my context of one of the dreams that I have in engaging people online.
Thank you for sharing those dreams. I think there's lots of exciting potential there. Just to kind of go off Sheila's note about Clay, I certainly hope that all of you who are connected to young people will keep your ears out for whatever happens online with Clay. I've had some new ideas just from this panel about things that we might be able to do. So new things are happening all the time there. But I think it also would be good to just take a look around online, because there are a number of events that were supposed to happen this summer that aren't, and some of them are transitioning to be fully online. So there's an event similar to Clay that the United Church does, called Rendezvous. Sheila's nodding, so I got it right. It's going to be online this summer, and it's free. So there might be cool things that you can tune into there. If you have people who are, actually, I think it's all ages. The Student Christian Movement has an event called Cahoots that's coming up soon, and that's going to be all online. And when it's in person, it's like an all ages kind of festival thing. I'm not sure what age their online content is geared for, but it's certainly worth checking that out. Yeah, there's all kinds of things.
I can say something about Cahoots. It actually is happening on Saturday, and there is a specific time for youth to gather in that. So they have workshops in the morning, and then a plenary piece in the afternoon. And I believe in between the workshops and the plenary piece, there's a specific youth gathering, which I think is really cool. And then Saturday night at Cahoots, they're doing a all ages dance party, which I'm imagining is going to be streamed Spotify playlist. Everybody dances in their home, which I think is kind of cool. Anyway, so that's the Cahoots thing. Sorry, Allie, to interrupt.
No, that was really great and really helpful. And just the Student Christian Movement is justice focused, and DYC for the past few years has had a pretty strong social justice theme, and that's something that's really resonated with young people here. So I certainly would encourage you to look up that and share it with your folks. And it's ecumenical, which is cool. Okay, other questions? Oh, Brianna says, grateful for an extra year to fundraise for Clay. Ain't that the truth? Calgary is pretty expensive to get to. Okay, are you doing anything during regular Sunday morning worship to engage young people? Nikki, I'm not sure if you're involved in the leadership of Sunday morning worship, but maybe if your church has anything going on, you could chat. If they don't, that's okay.
No, right at the moment we don't. I think it was just enough to kind of get something going. um, so I think that's kind of why, like, I stepped up and did the once a week on Sunday evenings instead of just once a month. So it kind of took the place of Sunday school, but we still wanted to tie in our families and not just the kids. So.
We don't have anything on Sundays during Sunday worship, especially for young people. And there's sort of two reasons for that. I think one, this whole process through the pandemic has been us figuring out how to do worship in the way that we're used to online. So it started out kind of as the Will Show, and it was all Will all the time. And then slowly we have been figuring out how to get the other voices that we're used to. So for us, that's like leading the prayers of the people and doing the readings and the psalm and things like that, how to get those other voices back in there, which is fairly easy with Zoom once we transition there, and getting music and stuff like that going. So it's like we've been doing a little bit better every week. The first few weeks it was all Will all the time. Then it was like Will and Charlotte's our associate priest. And that was a little better because Charlotte's got a good voice. And then it was Will, Charlotte, and like readers, and we're hoping to get a little more. So I'm kind of hopeful that we'll get to the point where we start to include stuff, especially for young people, as we transition out of like, oh no, like this crisis hit and we don't know how to deal with it, to this isn't a lot of fun, but it is sort of normal for us. I mean, but the other part that's really hard is we didn't have anything in our regular services before this that was particularly for young people. So to include it now would take some thought and creativity. I mean, the good news is lots of time for thought and creativity, I guess. And what better time to start introducing something new than in this time when everything's new, and then sort of sneakily just continue it on in our services once we're back in person. Oh, we've always done it this way. Don't you remember when we were on Zoom? But it does take that extra little bit of thought and willingness from the people leading worship.
I don't have much to say because I'm not involved in Sunday worship with young people in my role. I'm just really struck with I don't know if this could be incorporated somehow. I'll just put this out there, is that when I met with the primate and the folks from the Diocese of Ottawa, they had listed a whole bunch of questions to ask the primate that they gave to the primate in advance, even though she didn't ask for it in advance. She actually loves questions on the spot. I'm just wondering if there's some way to engage young people's questions somehow, like maybe put it out to families if anybody has any questions, and send it to the priest, and then they have some time to like figure out how to work that into the service. Or I don't know. I was really struck with how some of the questions that they came up with were like super deep and meaningful, and some were like kind of silly and fun, but they were all really interesting to start conversations. So maybe some way to listen to young people or have their voice be included somehow. That doesn't have to be like token, like, oh, we'll just have them do the reading this week, right? Like I'm not into that kind of stuff, but it's like something meaningful. I don't know. I just put that out there as a thought.
This is not an example of an online ministry thing, but when I was in university, so maybe not as young as lots of the young people that people are working with, I went to a new church once, and I met with it was a Free Methodist church, so I met with the pastor after that service. And he asked me at that first meeting what I could bring to serve in the church. And then I was on the worship planning committee from go. And being involved in that church community was one of the most transformative church communities that I've been part of, because I was asked what I could bring. So I think like your thing, Sheila, like how can we engage with young people's questions? Asking young people what they can bring to this time, I think, is a good question to ask. Like it's good to make your best guess and try to offer something to meet the needs of the people that you have. But if you're able to engage them and have a conversation about what they can bring or what can serve them, I think that's a really rich place to start. Okay, I have a question from Ruby. Ruby says, we haven't been doing anything on our pre-recorded services, and like Will, Ruby finds it difficult to do something with the children when she can't interact with them. They upload their services to YouTube, and there are a lot of restrictions regarding youth there. Any suggestions? I'm not super familiar with the restrictions on YouTube, and Will, I know you're not using YouTube, and I'm not sure. If anyone who's watching has any ideas on that, if you could put it in the chat, that would be great. But Ruby, I'll do some looking and see if I can find anything online and send you an email with some thoughts about that. I think, does the Cathedral, is that on Facebook, or do they do theirs on YouTube?
They're on YouTube.
Oh, okay, and they do a children's thing on, there's no children directly involved in it, but
they do something for young people.
They do something. Yeah, all the things that I can think of that offer something for young people that are pre-recorded don't have children or youth as part of the recording. Like my friend Jeremy, who's a Lutheran pastor in Winnipeg, he does a children's thing, and there are no children in it, but he'll ask questions and kind of pause, and he looks really thoughtful when he asks them. It's quite endearing. And then I will confess here, in the hopes that he'll never see this, I've never watched all the way to the end, but I gather that at the end he like does the offering of the peace and asks people to text him. So that's like one way to kind of use a non-engaging platform, or a non-interactive platform, I should say, to create some of that direct connection. But I'll do some looking to see what restrictions might come up, maybe, and I'll let you know what I find.
Allie, can I say something about this?
Yeah, please.
So just thinking, Ruby, about your question, which is pretty good, pretty fair question. I don't exactly know how to, so I don't know anything. I know very little about technology. Allie either knows things or is willing to find them out, and then sets all the stuff up for me, and I just do it. But if there's a way that, if you're doing pre-recorded services to use Zoom or a similar service to have a chat with a young person and make it a little more interactive, to get one of the kids of the parish to talk to you, and then splice that into your service at the appropriate time with both your faces and both your voices. Like, it's still not the same as having the whole, gaggle of kids there to interact with, but it makes it it might make it a little better than just talking to the screen. So you could do that separately and record it and then add it into your service. I think that would work.
Yeah, that makes sense and seems like a good way. And I think the only kind of restriction thing that might come up for that I can think of is just to make sure that you have like written consent is ideal. It's hard to get like a signed thing right now, obviously, but consent to post a video of a young person that indicates consent from them and their parent. Consent written in an email is not the ideal, but is something that is okay to use. So just making sure you have that is good. A comment, I think, from Rena. They're doing their closing this week, and they've delivered worksheets to the children and a craft to be completed by them. One of the families will lead them in song while the rest mute. And they sent out a YouTube and lyrics for the parents to practice together before Sunday. That's really cool. It's good to still mark those moments, like Sunday school would be ending for lots of places around now anyway. So marking time is really important. So not just letting those things go because things are so different. I think that's really great to have found a way to do that, Nina. And I'm sure that your families will appreciate that. Yeah, Sheila.
I just had an idea with Nikki talking about the coloring sheets, and is it Rena talking about craft things. Like there's lots of creativity happening in families' homes. Like I'm wondering if families sent a snapshot of the coloring sheet or the craft project, and then, like, again, it's more work, I know, and I apologize for suggesting more work because we are all overworked right now, but like putting together a simple little slideshow of those photos and those being part of the service, like, just, again, it's a little more technology, but that's one way that if the young people see their craft up there or see their coloring sheet, it's like, oh, I'm a part of this, even though it doesn't, like, it feels like a different way of being part of it, but they're still part of it and cared for by the church. I don't know, just an idea.
That's part of our plan, especially with the Pentecost Sunday coming up. So we had handed out the Pentecost coloring pages, and that's what people are supposed to do. Take a picture or a short little video of you holding up your sign and yeah, just kind of being a part of it. So we all feel like one church community, even though we're all spread out everywhere, but yeah, so great job.
Kind of a similar thought to that. Illustrated Ministries, it used to be called Illustrated Children's Ministries. They have free resources that they have been putting out every week. So maybe that's where your page came from. I haven't looked at their Pentecost ones, but I have a Pentecost one from them from a few years ago. And they have this great feature that they email out a huge PDF, like it's an incredibly detailed file. So you can print it in kind of poster form over, instead of it just being one page, it can be as many pages as you want, basically. And we've used this in the Community Roots Day Camp program, that each camper will color one of the pages and then we tape it together. And then it's this poster that everyone has offered something to. So another cool option might be to find a way to either email the individual pages or send them out in the mail, and then get people to drop them off at the church or send them back or whatever, and then put it all together. And then you could share that online, and then someday in the mystical future, when maybe we're allowed to gather again, then that can be a piece of remembering this time and how you remained connected throughout this. So
that's a great idea. I love it. I'm going to get right on that. Thanks, Allie.
Oh, thanks. Let me know how it goes.
Okay.
So we said that we would go till about 3:15. So maybe like we've got time for one or two more questions before we wrap up. So a question, what would you do differently if you were to start all this over again? What are things that you did that didn't work so well that you wouldn't want to do? Or what are different ways that you would have gone about starting? Yeah, well.
I mean, it's easy to think of lots of things that we would have done differently. If we'd been able to see this coming at all, having more of the regular leaders knowing how to use the technology would be really great. One of the things I forgot to say was we have one of our Godly Place storytellers records a story every week and we put it on Facebook, which is really nice, but her and her sister go down and her sister videos it and then puts the SD card in my mailbox and I have to upload it to Facebook. Like, it's a whole, and it took us a while to figure out, like, that's the simplest system we could figure out. Much easier if people know how to and are used to using the technology to begin with. I also would have started more earlier. As the pandemic goes on, it feels like if we haven't started it by now, like, well, maybe things will start to loosen up soon. Is there any, like, I know that there's still a point to keep doing it, but the feeling of inertia can take over really easily. So I think starting strong would have been a thing I would do differently.
I think just to reiterate something I've already said is I would have learned more about Zoom earlier, and I still can, and I probably will. Um, I think of myself as a pretty responsive person, so I roll with things pretty easily, and I know that's not a trait that everybody has. So I'm having a really hard time thinking of something. Like everything that I think of, I feel like an issue kind of posed itself and I adjusted. Um, so I guess I don't really know if I have an answer. To be honest, I would say, and this is probably out of the, well, no, I think it's totally relevant. I think I had a hard time taking care of myself in the midst of all of this. And that would be something that I probably should have been a bit more on top of. So I was worried about everybody else out there and not worried about myself. And I know myself enough to know that I was going to be fine for a long time. And then I crashed. And it's hard, even when you know that that's what's happening, and you need to take time for yourself. So I think I probably would have done something a bit better about that. So probably not the example you're looking for, but I think it's relevant.
Mine's kind of very similar to Sheila's. When we first got, when it first was announced that, okay, everything is shutting down and we have to kind of keep the world outside, I kind of saw it as a much needed break. We were in the process of painting our kitchen cupboards. So if you've ever done any kind of renovations in your kitchen, you know how disruptive that is to the whole house. So I was pretty excited that my husband was home to help me because I was going to do it on my own and that I actually had time to do it. So I was kind of selfish in the beginning thinking, yes, I've got all this time. But then as time continued on, I thought, I haven't done anything with church, and that didn't feel right. And I kind of waited too long, in my opinion, to reach out to connect with our families, because I just thought I had to have all my ducks in a row. But we all know that, having all your ducks in a row rarely works, especially for me. But you don't have to have it all together in order to reach out to show somebody else that you care. So that is probably the thing that I wish I could have done better. But yeah, it's all a learning curve. And Sheila, like you said, like you're lucky that you roll with the punches and you take what comes. And so everything we do, we learn from. So I'm not too hard on myself, and hopefully other people won't be either.
Yeah, I think all of those things are really reasonable things. Like, there's always something that you can learn from everything. So it doesn't mean that the things that you've done are wrong or bad. So thank you for sharing those things. Just to pick up a thing that Nikki just said, there's this quote that I usually share on Earth Day, that the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. Just because you could have started something on, I don't know, March 16th or whatever, the first day that they said things are locking down a little, just because you didn't start it then doesn't mean you can't start it now. There's lots of possibilities and people are still there, and it certainly isn't too late. Okay, one last question. I'm guessing, Sheila, this one won't be as relevant to you. How have you navigated having parents be involved in the ministry that you're doing? And still connect with children and people.
I'll go ahead first. We had a small Sunday school group. We went from a large Sunday school group to a very small, like one room schoolhouse type thing. And some of the kids were engaged, some of the kids weren't, you know, your typical, like, okay, you could tell the kids who were forced to be there. And you could tell the kids who wanted to be there. At the time, I was the Sunday school teacher, and I just kind of like felt that things just weren't going right. So I just talked to the parents and just asked them what they wanted their children to learn in Sunday school, and asked them if they just wanted to be a part of it. Something simple, didn't do a questionnaire. We just talked about it, and it was pretty easy. Everybody was really receptive to, you know, coming together to be together to learn. And families are so divided now that the time that they actually get to spend together is few and far between. So this was something that everybody could enjoy together, and it was very welcome. So.
In our regular parish life, parents aren't really involved in the ministry we do with young people because our Sunday school time is between the services. Parents drink coffee and tea in the narthex while the young people are in the godly play space or the teen class doing Sunday school. And, you know, it's sort of nice for parents in one way. They get to chat to each other and have a cup of church tea or church coffee. And but so the thing that's happened during the pandemic is that parents are almost always in the background. Like if their kids are watching it on Facebook, more than likely the parents are there watching it, at least in the same room. You know, the times we've done Zoom Sunday school, like I can hear the parents talking in the background. So they are there in a different way. They're not quite engaged, but they're at least present, which is, you know, a first step anyway.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for all the questions that people submitted, and thank you, Nikki, Sheila, and Will for sharing and answering things. Are there any last thoughts that any of the three of you have to share? Yeah, go for it.
I think this kind of idea needs to happen more often. I think we as leaders kind of need to connect more, share ideas, share resources, you know, sources of inspiration, really, and just different ways that we can engage each other and engage our families. You know, leadership can tend to be a lonely thing sometimes, and yeah, just this togetherness just makes it feel more right, more connected, and more meaningful. So that would be my suggestion, just to do more of this kind of idea.
Awesome, thanks, Nikki.
I'll just say that I really appreciate being part of these sorts of conversations. As you've all kind of heard, my role is a little different, but I love hearing what's happening out kind of with people doing direct ministry with children and youth. And please know that I will take your thoughts and ideas and share them with others that are doing the same thing in different parts of the country. So I just really am grateful to have been part of this, and thank you for inviting me. And I hope that the primate can come in another time to talk to you all, because she's really good.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to have this opportunity. Like when you're a parish priest, I found like ministry for families for young people is really, really important. And, you know, the young people are absolutely part of the congregation exactly as anyone else, but it's easy to set this ministry aside or give it a secondary importance because there's so much else going on. So but this is important ministry, and it's ministry that is necessary and really, really fruitful. And it's really fun to be able to take some time in an afternoon and talk about that.
Awesome. Well, thanks to all of you for taking that time to do this. I've certainly really enjoyed it, and I hope that the folks who are watching were able to learn some things to put into use. And I said this in the email that I sent out to everyone about this. But if you'd like to continue having times to get together to talk about how things are going and doing this, send me an email, and I'll definitely do what I can to coordinate that so that people can keep chatting about this. Because yeah, it is really important to have support and have people to bounce ideas off of and just talk to about these things. So I'm happy to do what I can to facilitate that. Okay, I guess that's all. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope that you're able to get outside and find some joy in your day. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.